Well, we think our physical symptoms all just happen to us. I caught this illness, or it was transmitted to me, or somebody made me get it. And what we're not seeing from the world of quantum physics is, no, my thoughts are not private and they're having all effects, and I'm creating my world through my thoughts. And even a lot of ancient wisdom saw that as well. So if I'm thinking thoughts about somebody else and what they're saying or doing or thinking, I'm actually attracting that and I'm seeing it through those tinted eyeglasses. And so if I want to get to the cause of my symptom, instead of thinking it's something that's doing it to me, I need to get to what my symptom is saying. And I find there are several questions I find very helpful to help me do that. And when I work with people, they can use those symptoms too. It's like, the overall arching question is, why might I need this? Would it get something for me? So would it get me loving attention? I think, for example, one person who taught me that way back early in my career was a man that had cerebral palsy. And he couldn't walk and was in a wheelchair. And we explored things and we discovered that his father was a physician. And his father, when they would be sick, he and his siblings, he would just be so caring and only time he was ever loving about things. But if he'd come home from the office and they left a few toys around or left their jackets not hung up in the closet, he'd dive in horribly critical with them and blame them for what they didn't do. So what this guy learned is, the only way I can have love in my life is to be sick, because that's the only thing that got love from my father. Now his was the most dramatic example of it, but most of us have that to some degree in our lives, that we think that our symptom will get something for us. It might be that it will get me loving attention. That's one possibility. It might get me out of doing something. It might be expressing some emotion I have difficulty dealing with. It might be expressing a belief system. I believe if I'm exposed to this, or I do that, or I'm overworked here in this way and to this degree, I'll get sick. So anyway, I need to see what it's saying. Is it going to get something for me? Is it get me out of doing something I don't want to do? Is it symbolically expressing an emotion I'm not dealing with directly? And on it goes. But I find if I can get to what the cause of my symptom is saying and find a healthier way of dealing with it, it just goes poof. Like the biggest example of that for myself, many decades ago, I had such a severely degenerated disc, the doctor said I wouldn't walk again without back surgery. And I researched it, and I found that 68% of the time people who had that back surgery were still worse off afterward in those days. And I thought, do I want to risk that? Well, that caused me to wake up and begin to explore, why might I need it? And I came up with 5 things I needed to change in my life, that I needed to do differently, or think differently, or act differently, or handle differently. And when I made a firm commitment that I absolutely knew I would keep, not just say it, but I knew I'd keep my word with myself, 3 days I was back at work. Whereas before I couldn't even walk. I could barely get to the bathroom and had excruciating pain. And then 3 months later, I went to see my doctor for an annual physical. And he says, well, I want to take an x-ray of your chest. We've not looked at your lungs for a long time. I said, well, I don't really want that radiation. He says, I have new equipment. It doesn't put out radiation like it used to. He talked me into it. So he comes back after and says, Henry, your lungs are fine. I said, great, I thought so, because I always did a lot of breathing. I did it in sports. I did it playing a trombone. I did it in singing and all those things when I was younger. So I used my lungs a lot to keep them active. But he said, then he started stammering. He says, but your lungs of yours, and I got scared. He said, they're totally healed. That disc is totally healed. That's not supposed to happen. And I thought, well, I haven't had any symptoms since, and since I made those decisions and dealt with my life differently, that one was a real convincing thing to me, that I didn't have to take a doctor's word that something outside me would fix it, but I had to deal with what the symptom was expressing for me. And if I dealt with that in healthier fashion, then I don't have a need for the symptom anymore. It just went away, the disc healed. And I found the same thing happens. I had a severe ski injury on ice when I was younger. My kids were small and we were out skiing one day and had a huge plain of ice. I went tumbling over it, head over heels, and it damaged my knee so badly I could hardly walk to get home, to get in my car. Fortunately, I was driving with my right knee, and I could put on the brakes and accelerator, and I could get home with my kids. But when I got to what it was about and what it was saying, and found some other ways of dealing with my knee, I found if I'd start to walk and it'd start to cause me pain, instead of getting scared, I would just simply say, no, it's healing perfectly now. With every step I'm taking going down this hill, it's getting healthier and stronger. And guess what? Within 3 or 4 steps, the pain was totally gone. And that's happened every time since. If I'm going down the hillside into a garage in Manhattan where my New York office is, and I start to feel that pain, I just make that different statement to myself and telling it what to do. And it's amazing how it happens. Instead of my saying, oh my God, I got to run, get surgery and have that fixed. But I find the new science of quantum physics says it's consciousness that rules over matter, not the other way around. But the philosophy of medicine is still in the old science of Isaac Newton 350 years ago, except for the technology like PET scans and CAT scans. But the otherwise, if we let ourselves recognize the whole picture and see that my body is expressing something that would get from me or get me out of doing, or an emotion, or reactivating a trauma, and so on. If I can let myself see what it's saying and deal with it differently, then I find the symptom goes poof. And I've worked with countless people who've chosen to do that. And this man I mentioned before had this thing with his father. Once he began to realize that he could deal with the issue of love differently, he began to get out of the wheelchair. Then he began to walk. Then he works with crutches. Then he let those go. He began to walk normally because he found another way of getting love in his life, which is what his issue was. But we all have our own issues. And if we can identify what they're saying and find a healthier way of dealing with them, the body just follows suit. We don't have to get something outside me to fix it, as most people think. Certainly, if you'd like to learn more about these methods or these tools or the combinations of them and how they work, I'll be glad to talk with you about it. You could contact me by phone or by email, or you could call me and we can make an appointment or two and we could discuss it more in relation to your area, your issues, your problem areas, and what would be effective for you to do together. So I'd be happy to explore those things with you. I have people who want to come in person can see me in New York City or in Westport, Connecticut. Others may prefer to have session by Zoom or telephone or FaceTime or things like that. So that's possible too, especially during this coronavirus situation. So whatever works for you is I'm open to explore with you. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about what this therapy is like.